There are truths that do not whisper. They claw their way through history, buried beneath layers of desire, illusion, and collective denial. And when they finally surface, they do not ask for permission. They demand that you listen. This is one of those truths. For centuries, men have built empires, waged wars, and written philosophies that shaped civilizations. But behind the walls of their reasoning, behind their carefully constructed virtues, there has always been a silent battlefield. Not fought with swords, but with impulses, with emotions, with desires that few truly understood. And there was one man, Arthur Schopenhauer, who dared to speak about this battlefield without flinching. His message wasn't romantic, it wasn't flattering, it was brutal. And because of that, it was buried, silenced by a world that prefers comforting lies to uncomfortable clarity. But we do not turn away from the uncomfortable. We do not run from the shadows. We stare into them. We learn from them, because strength is forged not in light, but in darkness. Schopenhauer's message about women is not a manifesto of hate. It's not a cynical rant. It's a mirror that reflects what desire does to men, a mirror that exposes the chains we forge for ourselves every time we let impulse command reason. And that is why we must listen, not because his words are pleasant, but because they are dangerous. And the man who refuses to hear dangerous truths will be destroyed by them. There's a reason why empires crumble, not from foreign enemies, but from within. Why great men fall, not in battle, but in bedrooms. Why brilliant minds lose their clarity, not because of lack of intelligence, but because of the oldest force known to man, desire without discipline. This is where Schopenhauer strikes. He doesn't speak to the crowd. He speaks to the man who dares to look at himself without illusions. He speaks to us. The question is not, what did Schopenhauer think about women? The real question is, what happens to a man who does not understand his own desires? What happens to his soul when he confuses emotional intoxication with truth? What happens when he believes he is free, but in reality he is led by invisible chains? And this is where Stoicism enters the arena, not as a moral toad, but as a weapon, a shield against the intoxicating pull of destructive emotions, a discipline that teaches a man to govern himself before the world governs him. The world doesn't warn you about this, because a distracted man is easy to control. A man consumed by lust and emotional chaos doesn't build, doesn't lead, doesn't rise. He chases, he kneels, he obeys his impulses as if they were gods. But we were not born to kneel. We were born to conquer the self. Schopenhauer understood something most men still ignore, that love, in its raw, instinctive form, is not a poetic dream. It is nature's trap, an illusion designed to keep the species alive while the individual loses himself in the fog. He called it out. He stripped it of its romantic disguise, and for that he was hated. But truth doesn't need to be liked. It needs to be understood. When you look at desire through Schopenhauer's eyes, something unsettling happens. The fairy tale collapses, the illusions burn away, and what's left is the naked structure of human instinct. Cold, unforgiving, and if you are not strong, it will devour you. This is why most men look away, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And then you face a choice, to continue living inside the illusion or to rise above it. This video is not for those who want comfort.
It is for those who want power, not over others, but over themselves. If you're still here, then you've already chosen the harder path. Good, because the truth ahead will not be soft, but it will make you stronger. Welcome to the message Schopenhauer left you about women. A message not meant to entertain, but to awaken.
In the 19th century, while Europe was basking in romanticism, poetry, and the rising ideals of love and progress, Schopenhauer sat alone with his thoughts, peeling back the layers of civilization like a man dissecting a beautiful lie. He observed men not through stories, but through instincts. He saw how men worshipped women as if they were celestial beings, while failing to understand the biological machinery working beneath the surface. He saw how men surrendered their clarity for fleeting pleasures, how their greatness dissolved the moment they placed emotion above discipline. And he wrote words that were so raw, so offensive to the collective dream that they were buried under the label of misogyny. But what he was doing was something else. He was warning us. He was telling us, be careful of the illusions that desire creates. They are not harmless. They are chains. Chains that disguise themselves as love. Chains that whisper sweetly while tightening their grip. Chains that turn kings into beggars and thinkers into fools. And this is where our journey begins. Part 1. Schopenhauer's Warning Unveiled. Every man believes he understands desire, until desire begins to understand him. There's a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when what you want stops being your choice and starts becoming your chain. And this moment is where most men lose themselves. Schopenhauer was not warning us about women as individuals. He was warning us about the power that our desires give away. He was warning us about the way illusions grow inside us, how they blur reason, how they slowly rearrange our priorities until we forget who we were before the feeling consumed us. He observed this with the cold eyes of a man who refused to lie to himself. He saw what happens when the mind is intoxicated by longing, how intelligence becomes justification, how strength becomes servitude, how clarity turns into fog. He saw men who were brilliant in public but weak in private, men who conquered cities but couldn't conquer their own impulses, men who spoke of freedom while their hearts were quietly owned by their cravings. And his message was simple but sharp. If you do not govern your desire will govern you. The illusion he spoke of isn't a woman standing before you. It's the story your mind tells about her. The story you build brick by brick until you no longer see reality. You see only your projection. You don't love the person. You love the image you've created. And when reality does not match the image, pain follows like night after sunset. Look closely at the world around you, at the songs, the films, the stories, the culture. How many of them glorify desire as if it's the highest truth? How many teach young men that to be consumed by love is noble, that to lose control is proof of sincerity, that obsession is romance? This is the great trap, a civilization that teaches men to romanticize their chains, to see enslavement as destiny, to mistake emotional chaos for depth. Schopenhauer refused to worship that illusion. He called it what it was, a force of nature, indifferent to your dreams, designed to keep the species alive, not to keep you wise. And when you confuse that force for meaning, you become a pawn in a game you don't even see. Desire is not evil, but desire is a storm. And storms do not care who you are. They drown kings and peasants alike if you don't respect their power. This is where Stoicism becomes not just philosophy, but survival. The Stoics understood what most men forget. Clarity begins where attachment ends. They did not reject love. They rejected enslavement. They taught that emotions are not rulers, they are signals. And if you let signals control your ship, the waves will dictate your destiny. Have you ever noticed how quiet your mind becomes when you stop chasing? How decisions feel cleaner when you stop worshiping your impulses? How strength returns the moment you reclaim your attention? That is the state the Stoics trained for. Not a life without passion, but a mind that refuses to kneel before passion. Schopenhauer's message wasn't an attack. It was a mirror. He was saying, look, this is the machinery beneath your fantasies. Don't turn away. Learn how it works, or it will own you. He saw how men become addicted to the chase, not because the object of desire is divine, but because the illusion is intoxicating. The thrill of being wanted, the rush of imagining a perfect union, the fantasy of completeness. And in that state, men forget discipline. They forget the path they were on. They rearrange their lives to keep the illusion alive. They silence their reason to avoid discomfort. And slowly, they surrender. Think about it. How many great plans have died quietly in the shadows of obsession? How many goals were postponed indefinitely because someone's heart was busy chasing ghosts? How many men lost themselves trying to control what was never theirs? This is the battlefield Schopenhauer spoke of, a war that takes place not outside, but inside, not with armies, but with impulses. And the casualties are not bodies, but souls. The Stoics had a name for the state we must reach: apatheia, not numbness, but freedom from destructive emotions. It is the stillness that comes when desire no longer commands your thoughts, when you can love without losing yourself, when you can admire beauty without surrendering your reason, when you can walk away, not out of coldness, but out of strength. A man who masters this is dangerous because he cannot be manipulated through his cravings. He cannot be bought with illusions. He cannot be trapped by emotional storms. His clarity terrifies those who thrive on confusion.
That is why so few reach this state. It requires honesty most people run from. It requires standing face to face with your own mind and not flinching. It requires saying, I will no longer be a slave to the stories I invent. Schopenhauer showed us the storm. Stoicism shows us how to walk through it. And we must decide who commands our soul, our impulses or our reason. Part 2. The Stoic response, mastering the storm within. We have seen the battlefield. We have seen the illusions. We have seen the storm that desire ignites in the human soul. Now comes the question every man who dares to walk the harder path must face. What do we do when the world tries to own us from within? What do we do when our impulses whisper lies louder than reason? What do we do when the image we built in our minds seduces us away from truth? The Stoics would answer, we stand. We stand not because the storm is weak, not because the illusions are false, but because we are stronger. Stronger in mind, stronger in spirit, stronger in our ability to observe and choose. Think of a man in his youth, intoxicated by the ideal of love. He sees not the person in front of him, but the vision he desires. He interprets every word, every glance, every gesture through the filter of his longing, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, he builds a prison, not for anyone else, but for himself. The Stoic stops. The Stoic observes. The Stoic asks, is this my choice, or am I being carried by the wind? That simple question is the knife that cuts through the fog. Because in that moment, the man becomes aware of the machinery behind his craving. He sees the patterns, the triggers, the illusions masquerading as truth. And he says, I will not kneel before this. I will not surrender my reason. We are not taught to observe ourselves in this way. Culture, music, stories, even history, they encourage surrender. They glorify being consumed. They treat giving in to desire as nobility. The Stoic sees through it. He understands that the power of desire is not in its object, but in the grip it has over the mind. And when that grip is broken, the man becomes free. Freedom is not the absence of longing. Freedom is the mastery of it. Freedom is seeing the illusions and walking forward anyway. Freedom is saying, I choose my path. My mind is mine. My soul is mine. Imagine walking through life with that clarity. Imagine feeling desire without being dragged into its whirlwind. Imagine admiring beauty without losing control. Imagine interacting with the world fully while remaining unmoved by the chaos others worship. That is the Stoic's power. And that power terrifies the untrained mind because it is not based on force or wealth or influence. It is based on self-command. And self-command is the rarest and deadliest force in existence. The Stoic does not hate the storm. He does not reject the fire within. He channels it. He understands it. He converts desire into observation, impulse into insight, chaos into clarity. And when he acts, it is not from reaction. It is not from need. It is not from hope or fear. It is from choice. And choice, unclouded by illusion, is unstoppable. Do you understand the difference? Most men are driven by forces they do not see. Most men are puppets of their instincts, dancing to a tune composed by biology, culture, and fleeting fantasies. The Stoic steps off the stage. He observes the strings, and he pulls only those he chooses to move. We have seen Schopenhauer's warning. We have seen the illusions, the chains, the traps that nature and society place before us. And now, we see the way out. The way out is neither anger nor avoidance. It is not hatred nor cold indifference. It is observation, clarity, and control. It is learning to feel without surrendering, to live fully without losing oneself, to acknowledge desire without letting it rule the soul. The Stoic does not deny desire. He masters it. He sees it, understands it, and moves through it like a man walking through fire, unharmed. The illusions may still be beautiful, the mind may still be tempted, but the Stoic is untouchable, not because the world has changed, but because he has changed. And this is the message we carry forward, not to judge the world or others or even ourselves, but to recognize the storm and choose the path of power, clarity, and freedom. To walk with purpose, even in the face of what seduces, distracts, or blinds. To stand when others fall. That is what Schopenhauer wanted us to see. Not hatred, not cynicism, but truth. And truth is a weapon, and the man who wields it wisely is free. So we ask ourselves every day, am I the master of my desires, or their servant? Do I see the illusion, or do I live inside it? Do I stand in the storm, or do I kneel before it? And when the answer is clear, the world becomes smaller, simpler, and sharper, because the chains no longer exist, not outside and not within. We do not rise by chasing. We rise by mastering. We do not conquer through surrender. We conquer through self-command. We do not find power in illusion. We find it in clarity. This is the Stoic way. This is the path Schopenhauer left for those who would listen. This is how a man becomes untouchable in a world that worships illusion.
Part 3. Awakening Inner Mastery. The Final Truth. We have walked the shadowed path together. We have faced the illusions, observed the storm, and stared into the machinery of desire. We have seen how the mind is tempted, how strength dissolves when clarity falters, how the unseen chains tighten around those who refuse to look. Now, we arrive at the final lesson. The Stoic way is not a promise of ease. It is a call to war. A war not with men, not with nations, but with the self. Do you feel the weight of your impulses? Do you sense the hidden strings pulling at your thoughts, whispering, "You are not complete, you need this, you cannot be whole without it"? Good. That is the battlefield speaking, and it is here that we decide. The man who rises is not the one who chases. He is not the one who surrenders to longing. He is the one who observes it, who understands it, who feels its pull and walks forward anyway. This is mastery, not of the world, not of others, but of the storm within. Think of all the men you have admired, the ones whose names echo through history, the ones whose power was undeniable, whose minds were unshakable. Every single one learned the same lesson. Freedom comes not from what you gain, but from what you refuse to lose to impulse. We are born into a world of distraction, a world designed to keep us chasing shadows, a world that tells us desire is proof of life and surrender is proof of depth. But we see the truth. We see that real power comes not from being consumed, but from choosing when to burn and when to remain unscathed. This is why Schopenhauer spoke, not to frighten, not to condemn, but to awaken, to show us the machinery of the mind and the danger of illusion, to hand us a mirror and ask, will you see clearly or remain blind? A man who masters himself is untouchable, not because life becomes easy, not because desire disappears, but because he walks in fire and remains unburned. He admires beauty without surrender. He engages without losing clarity. He loves but does not kneel. And this is where we find the ultimate freedom, the kind of freedom that is rare, that is feared, that is misunderstood. It is not the freedom to possess. It is the freedom to remain sovereign, to decide, to act, to live as a master of self, not a slave to impulse. We are not here to follow illusions. We are not here to worship desire. We are here to rise above it, to carve clarity from chaos, to forge strength from temptation, to stand in the storm and smile because the storm has no dominion over us. Every day you are tested, every interaction, every fleeting thought, every impulse
is a chance to prove who commands your soul. And the choice is simple: to surrender or to master, to follow or to rise, to be carried or to walk with power. We walk this path together, not because it is easy, not because the world understands, but because we understand ourselves, because we refuse to be puppets, because we refuse to kneel to illusion. The storm outside will rage, the illusions will tempt, the voices will whisper, "You are incomplete, you need this, you cannot resist." And we will stand, we will watch, we will choose, we will rise. Schopenhauer showed the chains. Stoicism teaches the key. And we will not be bound. The question is no longer what the world offers. The question is what you offer yourself. Will you kneel to illusions, or will you walk free? Will you surrender, or will you command? Will you be led, or will you rise? This is the path of mastery, the path of clarity, the path of strength, the path that few take and even fewer survive. But those who do are unstoppable, untouchable, free. And now the choice is yours. Walk into the storm or let it consume you.